Some women get effort without begging. They get dates planned for them. They get thoughtful messages. They get flowers. They get consistency. They get a man who wants to help, protect, provide, and make their life easier. And then there are women who give everything. They explain, they remind, they wait, they forgive, they lower their standards. They try to be more understanding, more patient, more available, more loving. And somehow, they still get the bare minimum. So the uncomfortable question is, why do some women get spoiled while others get ignored? And before we go any further, I need to make something very clear. When I say spoiled, I do not only mean money. I am not talking about manipulating a man into buying things for you. I am talking about effort, planning, thoughtfulness, emotional investment, consistency, protection, generosity. A man who wants to make your life softer, not harder. Because the truth is, you cannot force a man to provide. You cannot beg him into masculine energy. You cannot cry him into generosity. You cannot mother him into leadership. But there are certain women who naturally inspire more effort from men. Not because they are prettier, not because they are younger, not because they are perfect, but because of the way they receive, the way they hold their standards, and the way a man feels about himself when he is around them. And once you understand this, you will never look at effort, dating, or masculine investment the same way again. So let's talk about the psychology behind why men spoil certain women and ignore others. If you want the truth about attraction, dating, and relationship psychology in a way that is honest, warm, and actually useful, you are in the right place. And today, we need to talk about something that many women feel, but very few say out loud. Because sometimes, it is not that a man is incapable of effort. Sometimes, he is capable. He just does not give it to you. And that can hurt. Because you may look at him and think, but I know he can be sweet. I know he can be thoughtful. I know he can make plans. I know he can show up when he wants to. So why doesn't he do it with me? And this is where many women make the mistake of trying harder. They become more available, more understanding, more forgiving, more low maintenance, more useful, more convenient, because they think, if I make his life easier, maybe he will finally value me. But often, the opposite happens. The more she overfunctions, the less he has to invest. The more she proves, the less he has to choose. The more she carries the connection, the more comfortable he becomes doing less. Because men do not usually spoil the woman who begs the best. They spoil the woman whose presence makes effort feel meaningful. So let's break down what that actually means. The first kind of woman men naturally want to spoil is the woman who knows how to receive. And this sounds simple, but for many women, it is not. A man gives her a compliment, and she says, "Oh no, I look terrible today." He offers to help, and she says, "No, it's fine, I can do it myself." He plans something nice, and she feels guilty. He pays for dinner, and she immediately feels like she owes him something. He wants to make her life easier, and she panics because she is not used to being supported. And listen, this usually does not come from arrogance. It comes from conditioning. Many women were taught to be easy, to be useful, to not ask for too much, to not be a burden, to prove that they are independent, to prove that they do not need anyone. And independence is beautiful, but there is a difference between being independent and being unable to receive love. Because when a man tries to give and you immediately block it, minimize it, reject it, or act uncomfortable, you may think you are being polite. But sometimes what he feels is, my effort does not land here. And for many men, giving is not only about the gift. It is about the feeling that his effort had an effect. He wanted to make you smile. He wanted to feel useful. He wanted to feel like he could contribute something to your life. So when you cannot receive, he does not always think, wow, she is so humble. Sometimes he thinks, there is no place for me here. Now, this does not mean you should fake helplessness. Please do not misunderstand me. You do not have to pretend you cannot open a door, carry a bag, solve a problem, or pay your own bills. That is not feminine energy. That is performance. Real receiving energy is much simpler. It is being able to say, "Thank you, that was really thoughtful. That means a lot to me. I appreciate you doing that." That made me feel really cared for. That is it. Not guilt. Not over-explaining. Not immediately trying to repay him. Not acting like you are undeserving. Just receiving with warmth. Because a woman who receives well makes a man feel like his effort has somewhere beautiful to go. And that matters more than many women realize. Now, here is where it gets very important. A woman who gets spoiled knows how to appreciate effort, but she does not over-reward the bare minimum. And there is a big difference, because some women are so starved for effort that the smallest thing feels huge. He texts back after ignoring her for 2 days, and she becomes warm again immediately. He finally plans one date after weeks of inconsistency, and she acts like he did something extraordinary. He gives her a tiny crumb of attention, and she rewards him with full emotional access. And I say this with love. When you over-reward bare minimum behavior, you teach him that very little effort gets a very big response. That does not inspire more investment. It trains him to stay low effort. Because why would he rise when the floor already gets rewarded like the ceiling? Now, this does not mean you should be cold. It does not mean you should punish a man for small gestures. It simply means your emotional response should match the level of effort. If he does something thoughtful, appreciate it. If he shows consistency, notice it. If he plans something with care, receive it warmly. But if he does the absolute minimum, you do not have to throw a parade. Because the woman who gets spoiled is not desperate for crumbs. She is grateful, yes, but she is not shocked by basic respect. And that is a very different energy. She does not act like a man texting her back is a miracle. She does not act like a planned date is proof of eternal love. She does not confuse occasional attention with real investment. She appreciates what is good, but she does not make excuses for what is missing. And that balance is powerful. Because men can feel when a woman has never been treated well. They can feel when she is emotionally hungry. They can feel when the smallest gesture gives them access to all of her. And the wrong man will take advantage of that. But a woman with standards receives effort beautifully, without becoming overly attached to tiny pieces of it. That is what makes her different. The next reason men spoil certain women is because those women have standards without chasing. This is one of the most attractive combinations, because some women have standards, but they express them through pressure. They beg, they argue, they lecture, they keep having the same conversation again and again. They say, "Why don't you ever plan anything? Why don't you make more effort? Why don't you treat me like you care? Why do I always have to ask?" And of course, those feelings may be valid, but here's the problem. When you have to repeatedly beg someone to value you, the dynamic has already become painful. Because standards are not supposed to be speeches you give every week. Standards are supposed to be the way you live. A standard is not, "You need to text me more." A standard is, "I do not emotionally invest in inconsistent men." A standard is not, "You need to plan dates." A standard is, "I am attracted to men who take initiative." A standard is not, "You need to prove that you care." A standard is, "I do not stay where I feel unwanted." That is the difference. One energy chases, the other chooses, and men feel that. A woman with real standards is not constantly trying to convince a man to become better. She observes, she listens, she sees what he naturally offers, and then she decides whether that works for her. That is why she is not easy to take for granted. Because she is warm, but she is not endlessly available. She is kind, but she is not self-abandoning. She is open, but she is not desperate. She can like a man without making him the center of her emotional universe. And that creates a very different dynamic. Because a man knows that if he wants access to her softness, her affection, her attention, and her presence, he has to show up in a way that matches her. Not because she is threatening him, not because she is playing games, but because she actually has a life, a self, and a standard. And that is what many women accidentally lose when they like a man too much. They stop choosing, and they start auditioning. They stop asking, "Is he right for me?" And they start asking, "How do I make him pick me?" That is where the power leaks out, because the woman who gets spoiled is not trying to be picked at any cost. She is also deciding, and that changes everything. Now listen carefully, because this is one of the biggest keys. A man does not only want to give, He wants his giving to mean something. He wants to feel that his effort made a difference. He wants to feel respected, appreciated, and emotionally successful in your presence. This is why some women can ask for a lot and still receive more, while other women ask for very little and still receive nothing. Because it is not just about the request, it is about the emotional experience around the request. For example, imagine a man plans a date. One woman receives it with warmth. She notices the effort. She smiles. She says, "I love that you thought of this. That was really sweet. I had such a good time with you." He leaves feeling proud. He feels like, "I made her happy." And that feeling is powerful. Because men often bond through effort, they become more emotionally attached to what they invest in. He starts to see himself as the man who shows up for you, the man who plans for you, the man who protects you, the man who makes you smile, the man who makes your life better. And when he likes who he becomes around you, he wants to keep becoming that man. Now compare that to another dynamic. A man does something, but the energy around it is always tense. He feels criticized, controlled, corrected, compared, never enough. So even when he gives, he does not feel successful. He feels managed, and over time, he may stop trying. This does not mean women should praise poor behavior. Absolutely not. But it does mean that when a man does make real effort, the way you receive it matters. Because appreciation is not weakness. Appreciation is emotional leadership. A soft, sincere thank you can be more powerful than a long lecture. A woman who makes good effort feel meaningful often inspires more of it. Not through manipulation, but through emotional reinforcement. She lets him feel the positive impact of being good to her. And my lovies, that is very different from begging. Begging says, "Please give me effort so I can feel worthy." Receiving says, "When you show up well, I feel cared for, and I appreciate it." One comes from lack, the other comes from self-worth, and men feel the difference. Now we need to talk about the part that many women do not want to hear. You cannot mother a man into becoming generous. You cannot become his life coach, therapist, reminder app, emotional manager, and second mother, and then expect to feel like his woman. Because those are two very different roles. And this is where many feminine women accidentally burn themselves out. They see potential. They think, he just needs support. He has never been loved properly. He does not know how to express himself. He is stressed. He had a difficult childhood. He is not used to healthy relationships. And maybe some of that is true. But here is the hard truth. Understanding a man's wounds does not mean you should become responsible for his effort. Because when you constantly remind him how to treat you, you are not inspiring provision. You are managing neglect. When you keep explaining basic respect, you are not building intimacy. You are doing emotional labor he should be willing to do himself. When you have to teach him how to care about your feelings, plan dates, communicate, show up, and consider you, you are not being spoiled. You are raising him. And that will not feel romantic for long. Because deep down, a woman does not want to beg a man into effort. She wants to feel chosen. She wants to feel considered. She wants to feel like he thought about her before she had to remind him. And this is why certain women receive more. Because they do not stay forever in dynamics where they have to drag effort out of a man. They do not confuse potential with reality. They do not fall in love with who he could become while ignoring who he keeps choosing to be. The moment you stop mothering a man, you finally get to see who he is without your management. Does he step up? Does he notice your absence? Does he take initiative? Does he care enough to repair? Does he become more intentional? Or does the entire connection collapse because you were the only one holding it up? That answer tells you everything. And I know that can hurt, because sometimes women are not addicted to the man. They are addicted to the version of him they keep trying to create. But my love, you cannot be spoiled by a man you have to constantly supervise. You cannot feel protected by a man you have to emotionally carry. And you cannot feel cherished by a man who only treats you well after you break down. A generous man does not have to be perfect, but he does need to have willingness. Willingness to learn. willingness to lead, willingness to show care, willingness to repair, willingness to think beyond himself. Without that, you are not building a relationship. You are building a project. And you are not here to be someone's unpaid development plan. And before we go deeper, tell me in the comments, have you ever felt like you had to teach a man how to treat you? Just right, I have. Because I think so many women have been there. And if this video is already making you see effort differently, like this video, subscribe, and turn on the bell. Because on this channel, we talk about attraction, dating, and relationship psychology in a way that is honest, warm, and actually useful. All right, my lovies, let's keep going. Because the next point is the one many people forget. A woman men spoil is often soft, but she is not easy to take for granted. And this distinction is everything. Because some people think feminine energy means being endlessly patient, endlessly sweet, endlessly agreeable, and endlessly forgiving. But that is not femininity. That is self-erasure. True softness is not the absence of standards. True softness is the ability to stay connected to your warmth without abandoning yourself. That means she can be loving, but she can also say no. She can be affectionate, but she can also step back. She can be understanding, but she can also notice when understanding has turned into self-betrayal. She does not use coldness as a weapon, but she also does not use kindness as an excuse to tolerate less than she deserves. And that is exactly why her softness feels valuable, because it is not automatic. It is not given to anyone who shows up with a little attention. It is connected to discernment. She gives warmth where there is respect. She gives access where there is consistency. She gives affection where there is care. She gives loyalty where there is reciprocity. A woman who is soft with no boundaries often becomes easy to consume. A woman who is hard with no softness often becomes difficult to connect with. But a woman who is soft and self-respecting creates emotional contrast. She feels safe, but not guaranteed. She feels loving, but not desperate. She feels open, but not available to disrespect. And that combination is deeply attractive, because a man can relax in her feminine energy, but he also knows he cannot be careless with her. He cannot disappear and return like nothing happened. He cannot give crumbs and expect full access. He cannot treat her as an option and still receive girlfriend-level devotion. He cannot benefit from her softness while ignoring her standards. And this is where many women misunderstand being spoiled. A man does not spoil a woman because she is weak. He spoils her because he values access to her. Her presence feels good. Her warmth feels good. Her respect feels good. Her admiration feels good. Her softness feels good. But she does not give those things endlessly to a man who does not value them. That is the difference. She is not performing high value. She is living from self-respect. And self-respect changes the way people treat you. So, now, this may be the most important part of the entire video. Because even if you embody everything we have talked about, you still cannot inspire provision from a man who does not want to provide. You cannot receive from a man who has no desire to give. You cannot create generosity in a man who is committed to selfishness. You cannot turn a low-effort man into a provider just by becoming more feminine. And I need you to hear this, because a lot of dating advice makes women believe that if they just become softer, more feminine, more mysterious, more magnetic, more high value, then any man will suddenly rise. But no, the right energy can invite more effort, but it cannot create character where there is none. A woman who gets spoiled is not only good at receiving, she is good at choosing. She pays attention early. Does he naturally take initiative? Does he think ahead? Does he care about your comfort? Does he follow through? Does he listen when you express something? Does he enjoy making you happy? Does he become resentful when you have standards? Does he make you feel guilty for wanting basic effort? Because a man's attitude toward giving tells you a lot. Some men love to provide, not because they are being forced, not because they are being used, but because generosity is part of how they express care. They like planning, they like protecting, they like solving, they like contributing, they like making the woman they care about feel safe and cherished. Other men see every expectation as pressure. They see your standards as demands. They see your needs as inconvenience. They see emotional investment as a threat to their freedom. And with that kind of man, You can become the most feminine, soft, beautiful, understanding woman in the world, and he will still make you feel like you are asking for too much. That is not because you are too much. It is because he is not aligned with the kind of love you want. And the woman who gets spoiled understands this. She does not waste years trying to turn a reluctant man into a generous one. She observes the direction he already wants to move in. And if he does not have the desire to show up, she does not build a fantasy around his potential. She chooses reality. Because the goal is not to be chosen by any man. The goal is to be cherished by the right man. So now we come to the real reason. The deeper reason men spoil certain women is not just beauty. It is not just mystery. It is not just being feminine. It is not just being unavailable. It is this. A man invests most deeply in the woman who makes effort feel connected to his identity. He likes who he is when he is with her. He feels masculine, not controlled. He feels appreciated, not used. He feels inspired, not manipulated. He feels respected, not managed. He feels needed in a healthy way, not drained in a desperate way. He feels like his presence matters. And when a man feels like his effort makes him more of the man he wants to be, he gives more, he plans more, he thinks more, he protects more, he shows up more. Not because he is being forced, but because giving to her makes him feel proud. This is why begging does not work. Begging may create temporary action, but it does not create desire. Pressure may create compliance, but it does not create devotion. Crying may create guilt, but it does not create generosity. And constant explaining may create awareness, but it does not create masculine leadership. A man has to want to be that man with you, and your job is not to drag it out of him. Your job is to create the kind of life, standards, and emotional presence where the right man can rise, and the wrong man can reveal himself quickly. That is the power, not control, clarity. Not manipulation, discernment. Not chasing, choosing. So what does this mean for you practically? It means you stop asking, how do I make him spoil me? And you start asking, does this man naturally enjoy showing up for me? You stop asking, how do I become the kind of woman he finally values? And you start asking, do I feel valued here without having to abandon myself? You stop asking, how do I convince him to provide? And you start asking, is he capable of giving in the way I desire to receive? Because the woman who gets spoiled is not always the woman doing more. Often, she is the woman who stopped doing too much. She stopped carrying the whole connection. She stopped rewarding inconsistency. She stopped explaining the same need 10 times. She stopped auditioning for love. She stopped confusing anxiety with attraction. She stopped calling crumbs potential. She stopped being impressed by words that were not backed by action. And instead, she became available for a different dynamic. One where she can receive. One where she can be soft. One where she can be loved without performing. One where effort is not a fight. One where she does not have to shrink her desires to keep a man comfortable. And my love, that is not selfish. That is mature. Because real feminine energy is not about sitting back and demanding everything. It is about no longer over-functioning in a relationship where you are underloved. But I need to give you one warning. Do not use this video to become fake. Do not pretend to be soft while secretly trying to control him. Do not pretend to receive while keeping emotional score. Do not pretend to have standards while using withdrawal as punishment. Do not perform femininity because you think it will make a man give you more. Because the right man will feel the difference between genuine receiving and strategy. The goal is not to become a character. The goal is to come home to yourself. To stop rejecting help because you feel unworthy. To stop overgiving because you fear abandonment. To stop calling yourself low maintenance when you are actually afraid to have needs. To stop accepting emotional poverty because you are scared there will be nothing better. That is the deeper work. Because a woman who receives well is not entitled. She is open. A woman with standards is not difficult, she is clear. A woman who walks away from bare minimum is not cold, she is self-respecting. And a woman who wants to be cherished is not asking for too much. She is asking for a love that feels like love. So why do men spoil certain women and ignore others? Because certain women know how to receive without guilt. They appreciate effort without over-rewarding crumbs. They have standards without chasing. They allow a man's effort to feel meaningful. They do not mother him into becoming generous. They are soft, but not easy to take for granted. And most importantly, they choose men who are actually capable of giving. Because the truth is, you do not want to convince a man to provide. You want to be with a man whose love naturally has generosity in it. A man who does not feel punished by your standards. A man who does not feel threatened by your needs. A man who does not make you feel guilty for wanting effort. A man who sees making your life softer as part of loving you. And until that kind of man appears, your job is not to shrink. Your job is not to chase. Your job is not to become easier to ignore. Your job is to become so rooted in your own worth that bare minimum no longer feels romantic. Because the right man will not need you to beg him into caring. He will want to show you. So tell me in the comments, have you ever been in a situation where you gave more and he gave less? And what did it teach you? If this video helped you understand attraction, effort, and masculine investment in a deeper way, like this video, subscribe to 1001 Relationship Facts, and turn on the bell. Because on this channel, we talk about love, dating, attraction, and relationship psychology in a way that feels honest, warm, and actually useful. And if you want to understand the kind of feminine energy that makes you feel powerful without becoming cold, watch my last video, Dark Feminine Energy, the unfair dating advantage most women never use. I think it connects perfectly to what we talked about today. Thank you for watching, my lovies. And remember, the goal is not to make a man spoil you. The goal is to stop building relationships where you have to beg for basic effort. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.